What is going on, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global here, back with another video, and in this one, we're going to be doing a highly requested video. This, of course, is something that I started last year, in which we go back to the Patriots' previous draft. In this case, this will be the 2020 draft, and we regrade it a year later. Basically, we finally saw a full season with these guys under the helm of the New England Patriots system. First year in the NFL. Let's go back and give them grades based off of what we saw in their first year of the NFL. So first up is in the second round, and it's going to be pick number 37. Let's remember that the New England Patriots did trade their first round pick with the Chargers, and this pick was, of course, safety Kyle Diggar from Lenoir-Rhyne. Now I'm going to give this one a B+. When the Patriots originally drafted him, I did have question marks. He was not my number one safety at that time. They still had several guys that they could take. They still could have taken Grant Delpit. I believe Xavier McKinney, was still on the table if they wanted to grab him. I like the idea of getting some help at safety, with Patrick Chung opting out, both Patrick Chung and Devin McCourty getting older. But of course, also in the second round, the Patriots have had a lot of issues drafting within that secondary. Let's look at some previous second round picks, right? Jordan Richards, Duke Dawson, Cyrus Jones. We could go on with the amount of busts Bill Belichick has selected when it comes to defensive backs in the second round, so I was worried about Kyle Diggar. Of course, Lenoir-Rhyne was also a small school, so people had question marks on how is he going to perform heading into the NFL with much, much bigger competition. Now, Diggar was known for his versatility in college, and that is something that 100% translated to the field. There were times that we saw him at free safety, strong safety, playing the hybrid linebacker role. And it really did not take much time for Bill Belichick to throw Kyle Diggar within the helm of the NFL. By week 2, he was getting significant snap count against the Seattle Seahawks, a Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson-led offense, and Kyle Diggar was already getting significant playtime both at linebacker and safety. Now, statistically for Kyle Diggar this season, when it came to pressure, he was able to put up half a sack, 5 pressures, and 4 run stuffs. Coverage-wise, he was targeted 17 times. He allowed 8 receptions for 113 yards, a pass broken up, 2 flags, and allowed a passer rating of 69. I think a B+ is a very fair grade for Kyle Diggar. Of course, there is a lot to improve. We saw him in a lot of different places. I'll be curious to see exactly where Bill Belichick decides to place him, but it seems like he'll be a Patrick Chung, Adrian Phillips type of role. I would definitely say that he needs to excel a little bit more in coverage, more specifically man coverage. That's what the Patriots really like to run. And if he is not going to do too well in man coverage, then you're going to have to ask him to kind of be more of a Devin McCourty type role and play a cover 1, cover 2, etc. Now, next up, also in the second round, pick 60, the New England Patriots selected edge rusher / outside linebacker from Michigan in Josh Uche. I'm going to give this one an A-. That might be pushing it a little bit. Some might say it's even better than that. But there's a lot to get into with Josh Uche. Now, just like Kyle Diggar, he had a trait that Belichick loves, and that comes to versatility. Again, he can play linebacker. He can play at edge defender. The majority we saw him was at edge defender. I think we saw him 1 game at linebacker, and that's it. I would like to see him a little bit more at linebacker just so we can get a bit more of a feeling on how he can do at that linebacker position to see exactly how that versatility can come into play. In his college days, there would be some games where you would see him at edge defender. There'd be some games where you would see him playing at linebacker and having to coverage slot wide receivers. And he did well at it. So I think for me, this grade could go up. And I think it's as high as it is more so because there's a lot of potential here for Josh Uche that we haven't seen. I think that he isn't going to end up being just like a Chase Winovich, who, for the most part, is just an edge rusher. I think that he can take over a Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins role where, yes, he is mostly a pass rusher, but can also play at linebacker and excel in pass coverage. The Patriots were able to get Josh Uche in the second round, and they did not push whatsoever. Josh Uche was a steal for the Patriots in the second round. The only reason that he dropped as low as he did was not because of talent, was not because he didn't have production. It was because people were concerned with the amount of snaps that he got at Michigan. He didn't get a whole lot of time, so his stats were not as up there as they, could have been. People had question marks on how sustainable is he going to be. Now, statistically here for Josh Uche, it's not going to be anything that pops out, For somebody who just looks at his stats and tries to base off of how he did in his first season in the NFL and with the Patriots, it probably won't be good, but there's a lot more that goes into it. Statistically, pressure-wise, he only recorded 1 sack, 7 quarterback hits, 9 pressures. Coverage-wise, he was targeted 1 time. He didn't allow a single reception and allowed a passer rating of 39.6. Let's remember that Josh Uche did not come into the game until multiple weeks into the regular season. He was dealing with injuries. Belichick had him being a healthy scratch for part of that also. We only saw him a little bit in training camp because he was placed on injured reserve. And then, of course, he was placed on injured reserve again to end the season. So for the last couple games, we also didn't get to see him. So those numbers are definitely not evident to what Josh Uche is able to do when he was even able to get on the field. Belichick wasn't giving him a crazy amount of snaps. So, I would like to see him getting at least 80% of snaps each week, able to play a full season, and I think you are going to see that production rise significantly. Now, next up here in the 3rd round, pick number 87 from Alabama, the New England Patriots select another edge defender / linebacker in Anfernee Jennings. I'm going to give this one a B-, okay? Maybe that's a little tough, but hear me out. Now, I will say that Anfernee Jennings did definitely make an immediate contribution to the New England Patriots defense, and Belichick, of course, trusted him right from the get-go. He saw very high snap counts already in week 1 and continued to see those high snap counts. Personally, that's something that didn't surprise me at all because he is from Alabama, and he was very disciplined coming into a Bill Belichick defense. I think I had a little bit too much of high hopes for Anfernee Jennings coming in here, at least for his rookie year. I thought that we'd see him better in coverage. I expected a lot more when it came to rushing the passer, and that's just not really his game. He came in as a run stopper. That's who he is, and that's exactly what he did. He made a few really nice and key stops in the running game, and I mean, that is what the Patriots need. The Patriots do need guys that are able to stop the run. But at the same time, I do expect a lot more from Anfernee Jennings, coming from a school from Alabama, being a 3rd round pick. If you're just going to be able to stop the run and be a run-stopping edge defender, then Belichick completely reached in the 3rd round. Let's remember that Landon Roberts was that same type of player, and they got him in the 6th round. Now, statistically for Anfernee Jennings, when it comes to pressure, he was able to put up 2 quarterback hits and 2 pressures. Coverage-wise, he was targeted 2 times, allowed both of those receptions for 12 yards, and allowed a passer rating of 91.7. Now, currently, I don't have those exact numbers up because this is something that I read somewhere, and I found it really interesting, and I wish that I kept it so I had these exact numbers. But there was a certain amount of plays, and it was a very significant amount of plays that Anfernee Jennings had as an edge rusher, applying pressure, getting to the quarterback, not just stopping the run, several times. And he was not able to make much of an impact. He was not able to get much pressure. That is definitely the weakness in his game, is getting pressure, applying pressure on the quarterback, and being that type of edge defender. I've seen a lot of people trying to say that he could be a really great Rob Ninkovich-styled player, and maybe down the road he can. I would say right now that's just a bit of a push because Rob Ninkovich had the ability to stop the run. Rob Ninkovich had the ability to get to the quarterback. And what we are seeing from Anfernee Jennings, especially statistically, is that he is having a lot of problems transitioning to the NFL, getting past, I would say average to above average offensive linemen and get to the quarterback. Now, next up here, we get into the tight ends. 3rd round, pick 91. Tight end, Devin Aromasi out of UCLA. I'm going to give this one a C+. I actually had Belichick potentially drafting Devin Aromasi, right? Before the draft, I made a video on a few tight ends the Patriots could draft. Devin Aromasi was on there. Devin Aromasi was not as high as Belichick drafted him. I think I had him within the 5th or 6th round. Belichick drafts him in the 3rd round, and my jaw just drops because I never thought that Devin Aromasi was a guy that should be selected as high as the 3rd round. And yes, for this 2020 draft class when it comes to tight ends, there was not a lot of great tight ends, period. There really was not. This was not a good tight end draft class. But at the same time, if you don't see a tight end you like, then you don't select him. You don't push in the 3rd round to take some guy who is one of the better tight ends in a terrible tight end draft class. But nonetheless, Belichick did, and that has to be because he sees something in Devin Aromasi. And of course, he was probably the most anticipated player for the Patriots this past season in 2020, and it was nothing but a disappointment. And the situation here with Devin Aromasi and even Dalton Keene, which we'll get into next, is the fact that he had the ability to make himself a big part of this offense, to make plays. There was nobody pushing him out of that role except himself, and he still was not able to do anything. Now, I will be one to say that let's not judge Devin Aromasi just yet. Let's not judge even Dalton Keene just yet. Belichick said himself that this was a very wonky offseason. They only got a few weeks of a training camp. You know, this was a very modified offseason. Belichick, the coaching staff, they were not really able to work with them. They were not able to divulge them within the system and going over the plays. So I think straight off the bat, Belichick knew that these guys were not going to come in and make an immediate impact year one, especially when they didn't even have their quarterback situation figured out until much later into the offseason. I think with both Devin Aromasi and Dalton Keene, Belichick saw these guys as more of projects, someone that he can develop into better players within a couple of years, and not someone that he thought was just going to make that impact year one. Now, the tight ends didn't really get too much looks to them, but look, Devin Aromasi was targeted 7 times this entire season. Nothing crazy, but he was only able to catch 2 of those passes. You know, when you're targeted 7 times and you're only able to catch 2 passes, there's definitely an issue, you know, and statistically, with those 2 catches, he was only able to put up 39 yards and 1 touchdown. Blocking-wise, we knew was not really his game. Devin Aromasi was drafted more for his receiving ability. When it came to blocking, he gave up a sack and a quarterback hit. Nothing crazy. I don't think he's a terrible blocker. I think he can develop, but that's definitely not the reason that the Patriots drafted him. I think that, you know, when it comes to a better blocking tight end, that's definitely Dalton Keene. All in all, was definitely a very rough year for somebody like Devin Aromasi. He also had a very, very close death to him in the family, probably mid-season, so that definitely took a toll and really did not help his production whatsoever also. Seemed like he had some troubles getting open also, just escaping from man coverage. But again, I think within a couple of seasons, especially even next year, if we get an actual offseason this year, that we could see a much better improved version of Aromasi. Now, next up here, of course, the Patriots did select another tight end, 3rd round, pick 101 out of Virginia Tech, tight end Dalton Keene. I'm going to give this one a B-. All right, I'm going to give this one a little bit higher than Devin Aromasi because I do believe that the Patriots did not give Dalton Keene as much opportunities as Aromasi. The thing between Devin Aromasi and Dalton Keene is that each week it could vary. You know, sometimes you would see Dalton Keene getting the start. Sometimes you would see Devin Aromasi getting the start. But for the most part, Belichick very, very much liked to roll with Devin Aromasi as that starting tight end. And I mean, rightfully so. I think that's something that we all pretty much expected to happen. Coming out of college, Keene is someone who is known for his aggressive play style, his aggressive blocking, his speed, his dependable hands, all around that versatility. We call him that Swiss Army knife when he was coming out of the draft because he is so versatile. He can play at so many skill positions. I mean, inline tight end, wing tight end, fullback, running back, wide receiver, whether that's in the slot or the outside. And I think that he had those same issues that Devin Aromasi had. You know, he did not get a real offseason. He only got a couple weeks of training camp. He was not able to work with the coaching staff. He was not able to work with Belichick. They were not able to work on these plays with the quarterback, with the wide receivers. They weren't really able to get one-on-ones. There are a lot of factors that go into this. And when you, again, have guys like Dalton Keene and Aromasi who are project tight ends, project development players, You can't have an offseason like we did this past year. For the most part, Keene either spent this year as a healthy scratch, he was under the depth chart, but I think that he could have a breakout at some point as long as we start to get real off seasons when the coaching staff can really work one-on-one with these guys. Now, Dalton Keene was targeted 5 times, in which he had 3 catches for just 16 yards. He, of course, I believe in the last week, it was either the last week or the second to last week of the NFL regular season for the Pats, he did have a pretty bad fumble. So, I mean, of course, not something you like to see. All in all, I don't even think Belichick exactly knows how he wants to use him just yet because he's so versatile. So I think Belichick is still figuring things out with Keene. That versatility brings a lot of potential for the New England Patriots and the offense going forward. So that's why I am grading him a little bit higher than Asiasi. Now, next up here in round 5, pick 159, Justin Rohrwasser, kicker out of Marshall. I'm giving this one an F. You know, I'm not gonna give him a D. I'm not gonna give him a C. No. This is a straight fail by Bill Belichick, and I think we all knew Belichick was going to draft some type of special teams player. We all kind of expected kicker within the 5th round. He always does that in the 5th round. Likes to go with those special teams players. But even when he was selected, we were all just sitting back there and going, "What in God's name is Belichick doing?" Right? Because no other kicker was taken off the ball yet. You know, you had guys much, much higher ranked than Justin Rohrwasser, and you still decided to go with him, right? I mean, you had guys like KJ Hill or Darnell Mooney who you could have went with. And even if you wanted to address kicker, you could have went with the best prospect in this draft, easily, hands down, in Rodrigo Blankenship out of Georgia. And look how that panned out for the Colts. This is just one of those extremely, extremely frustrating things with Bill Belichick. Sometimes he looks into a guy too much. Sometimes he falls in love with a guy and he doesn't look into the talent aspect as much. And sometimes that's what you got to do, especially for somebody like a kicker. That's exactly what you got to do. Rodrigo Blankenship, the best kicker coming out of the 2020 draft. And he was easily the best kicker in the 2020 draft this season and one of the best kickers all around. I do understand what Belichick saw in him. Rohrwasser did complete 86% of his field goals and additionally also made 97% of his extra points, meaning he only missed 3%. That is a good number. He also played in the trenches, bad weather. That's why Belichick drafted him. You come into the offseason, though, the few weeks of training camp, and he's not consistent. Some weeks he's hitting it out of the park. He can be accurate, and then the next time he can't hit it at all. You know, 1 minute he's hitting a 50-yard bomb. The next he can't even complete a 30. He lost his job to Nick Folk because he couldn't be consistent. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. He's on the practice squad. I don't know if I can ever trust Justin Rohrwasser again, and this just might easily be a failed 5th round pick. Next up here in the 5th round, pick 182 overall, guard out of Michigan, Michael Onwenu, A+. You cannot argue with that. I mean, A++++. Michael Onwenu, the best selection by the New England Patriots in the 2020 draft. And arguably the steal of the draft. And that's my bad, y'all. I meant the 6th round pick, 182 overall. And let me just say, if this was not a guard, this was not an offensive lineman, I definitely think that Michael Onwenu would have won Rookie of the Year. Or Offensive Rookie of the Year, rather. But because he does not play a shining role like wide receiver, tight end, corner, linebacker, edge defender, and he's just what people consider a boring offensive lineman, he's not going to win that Offensive Rookie of the Year. But for a while, he was actually graded by PFF as the best overall offensive rookie. I'm considering over Justin Jefferson, over Claypool, all of these guys was graded better. And then towards the end, Justin Jefferson kind of hopped over him a little bit, and I believe he became the second, by the end of the season, the second best graded offensive rookie from the 2020 class. Michael Onwenu is already proving that he is an all-pro, that he's a pro bowler. And I guarantee you that this is going to happen. I believe from a rookie standpoint, he was actually all-pro. Like he made, if you're talking about making a full roster, based off of the rookies from the 2020 class. Michael Onwenu was a plug-in starter. Statistically, Onwenu led up 3 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and 8 pressures, along with 1 flag. A big part of that is because of the amount that he was getting moved, right? The Patriots had some question marks on this offensive line, some moving around as the season went on, whether that was Isaiah Wynn being placed on the injured reserve, whether that was them having issues at right tackle. The Patriots decided to roll with Michael Onwenu at tackle for the majority of the season. We did see him at guard. That's definitely where he excels, but he has that ability and that versatility to play anywhere on this offensive line. Right guard, left tackle, right tackle, and that is a very important thing to have, especially when you're the Patriots and you deal with several injuries on that offensive line, and you have injury-prone guys like Isaiah Wynn. You need someone like Onwenu who you can plug in at those key roles when you need. He's been nothing but phenomenal, fantastic. Any words you can think of, I would not argue with you for a single second. Whether it's in pass protection, whether it's in run blocking, he has been phenomenal, and he is going to be extremely important for the Patriots for the next several years. And I think this is partially why Belichick will be okay with letting go of Joe Thuney, because they have a guy who is equally as good coming up right behind him. Now, next up here in the 6th round, the Patriots selected tackle Justin Herron, and I'm going to give this one a B+. I like the fact that in the late rounds, the Patriots went and they continued to address the offensive line, especially after what we saw in the 2019 season, and Justin Herron actually proved that he was going to be a very important piece in 2020. Now, I will say that things did not start out perfectly for him. I stand by that. But as the season went on, he very much progressed. This isn't someone who I think Belichick wanted to be a starter. I think he's someone who Belichick was like, all right, I'm comfortable with him being a swing tackle and then going from there for the next few years. But due to injuries, he did have to get plugged in as a starter several times. He easily became a very, very dependable guy. I do believe that at one point he was in with a little bit of an injury, but besides that, very dependable. Again, a guy that you can just plug in and play whenever you need. Again, something Bill Belichick loves tremendously, and is someone who can develop and continue to learn the playbook as years go on. Again, I don't think as a 6th-round pick, Belichick thought that he was going to plug him in day one and it was going to make the world of difference. I think that Belichick decided that, again, make him a swing tackle for a little bit, and within a few years, he will be a starter. And I genuinely think that with his physical tool set he has, he will be a starter for the Patriots, probably at right tackle. Now, next up here in the 6th round, the Patriots selected outside linebacker Cash Maluia. I'm going to give it a C+, and I think that some people are going to hear that plus part and be like, yo, what the heck are you talking about? Like, that's a little generous, Patriots Global. But hear me out. I liked Cash Maluia, right? And I think that Cash could have made a true impact on the Patriots defense, especially with a linebacker core that was very, very much depleted. I mean, there were weeks that Juwan Bentley would be the only linebacker for the Patriots. There were weeks that he wasn't even there, and he was absent, and he was not a healthy scratch, but he was dealing with injury. So the Patriots had to go ahead and lean on some of these rookies and lean on some of these safeties playing the hybrid linebacker role. Cash Maluia was originally brought in as a core special teamer and had defensive upside. We really did not get to see much of any of that. He was a guy who was cut and then brought back and then cut and then put on the practice squad and then promoted again and then cut. And I just don't think that he was being given a fair chance, especially because for the few weeks of training camp that we actually had, we heard extremely positive things about Cash Maluia playing on defense. He was someone who was able to help within the, defending the pass and grabbing interceptions and even getting to the quarterback at times. I think he really could have helped replace that role of a Jamie Collins and a Kyle Van Noy. Am I saying that he is the caliber of them? No, but I'm saying he could have helped within that aspect, especially with a depleted linebacker core. Overall, I was very disappointed with how things went with Cash. I do think he does have more upside than, what the Patriots are allowing to be showcased. But, in the end, it is what it is. And lastly here, round 7, the Patriots selected center Dustin Woodard. I'm giving this one an F just because he retired before the season even started. So, it's obviously a failed pick, not really on Bill Belichick's side. I don't blame Bill Belichick. It's not like he drafted him knowing that this dude was going to retire a few weeks later, but it is what it is. It happened, and it was just a failed 7th round pick. But these are my grades for the Patriots individual players looking back at that 2020 draft class. Overall, I give Belichick probably a B. Maybe if I'm feeling generous, a B+, but I think I'm going to keep rolling with that B overall for this 2020 draft class. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section below. And make sure you guys also go check out my boys over at betonline.ag. The NFL regular season is finished up. The NFL playoffs are getting ready to be finished up, and we're heading on to the Super Bowl. Go ahead, guys. Make your bets right now. You can also get on, NFL games of the week, of course, college football, headlines in sports, poker tournaments, all of that great stuff, and you only get that at BetOnline. Do not sit on the sideline anymore, y'all. Get in with the action, and don't forget to use that promo code CLNS50 to receive 50% off welcome bonus with your first deposit. Again, that is BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Like always, I appreciate you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.